Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today I am thrilled to share our next guest with you, Jason Collett. Jason's an amazing guy. He is the CEO of Adaptivity, a strategic HR and leadership consulting firm. He's a highly sought-after speaker. On the stage, he not only combines his wide range of business leadership experience, but he also integrates his mountaineering experience as well. And he talks about developing engagement in cultures, empowering people and teams, creating mountain movers, as he says. Jason has been a leader within Fortune 100 companies, startups. He has been in so many different scenarios, helped so many people. He's so generous with his time. Recently, he made a social media post asking people to reach out if they needed help after getting laid off. And he's literally helped dozens of strangers land new jobs based out of his own experience and generosity. He's exactly the type of person we like to have on the show so we can learn from their experience, how they communicate with others, how they see the world, and what we can learn and apply from that experience and perspective as well. So really excited for our conversation with Jason today. Of course, we want to thank our sponsors, HumanTell. Please head over to humantell.com for industry-leading training on recognizing nonverbal displays and changes of emotions with facial expressions and nonverbal behavior. Top of the line training. I can vouch for it personally. If you head over there, please enter the code INQUASIVE25, INQUASIVE25 for a 25% discount off all of their online training. Also, please check out Emotional Intelligence Magazine, ei-magazine.com, for their ever-expanding library of emotional intelligence-related resources, from articles to videos to podcasts to education events. There's so much going on over there. They're always adding more. Please go check them out. And of course, for the investigative interviewers, please head over to the International Association of Interviewers at certifiedinterviewer.com. Check out all of their member interaction, their resources, their legal updates, all the things that they're offering to their members. Of course, if you qualify for the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, the International Association of Interviewers exists to continue to move the industry of interview and interrogation forward and make sure that elite interviewers have the tools they need to conduct morally, legally, and ethically successful interviews in any context. So check out certifiedinterviewer.com and the International Association of Interviewers. All right. So without further ado, thank you for joining us today. I introduce to you, Jason Collett. Good morning, Jason. It is so great to see you. How are you?
I'm great, man. It's good to see you again.
I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been too long.
It's always too long. It's you are one of my favorite people on the planet, man. I'm always inspired and energized after we get together. So it's good to see you again.
Well, thank you. And the feeling is certainly mutual. So obviously we've spent some time together. I've got some insight on your background, where you've been, what you've done. But for people who might be meeting you for the first time today, in a Cliff Notes version, because I know your story is deep, in a Cliff Notes version, what led you to running Adaptivity and dedicating yourself to helping so many professionals in so many ways?
Yeah, Cliff Notes, I have this really eclectic, odd ADD style work history. I started off in psychology, undergrad, but I had this kind of pragmatic experience teaching rock climbing and ice climbing. So blending these two things together gave me this kind of non-corporate insight into how human emotion and the brain and socialization really works in the workplace. And so that really launched my career. And what was interesting about it, I've had time in the Fortune 10, the massive companies like Honeywell with, 200,000 plus people around the globe. But then I've also been involved in my own startups that I've created from scratch and built up and then had the opportunity to sell. And then a lot of mid-level companies, global, but, maybe, 300,000, maybe 2,000, all kinds of different companies in different industries. And so my gift, my area, the thing that I'm thankful for is this connection, the human factor element of business. And so that's really what I've developed, my career around, and what I give back, every day, or try to give back every day, either on an individual, a corporate, a social, or a team-based level. So that's what I do.
And give back is a theme we're going to come back to, because a couple of months ago, you put yourself out on a limb, social media, and really did start giving back in a way that very, very few people do. And I can't wait to share that and even learn a little bit from it myself. But before we get there, I do want to ask, you teach so much and you work with so many different peoples I can't even speak English. You work with so many people and professionals, leadership level, HR level, like you said, from well-established organizations to startup organizations. When you're working with people in the business world, what lessons are you most passionate about teaching? Or to ask it better, maybe what skills are you more passionate about developing?
Yeah, I really like to meet people and organizations, for that matter, where they are at, right? So it's not about a particular program or a particular skill set that I'm trying to deliver, but it's how do you identify the strengths that somebody has and really accentuate those, but then also identify those things that might be a little bit off that could potentially be an Achilles heel, right? And so how can we put a process or a tool or a skill in place so that a potential Achilles heel doesn't manifest itself? And so, with the CEOs and the executives that I work with, that could be anything from, like an emotional intelligence piece. I find, not so ironic, right? Listening skills are so absolutely critical. I find that, often we're programmed into this, this type A, like go, 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 go. And instead of truly authentically listening to somebody, we're so quick to be ready to respond and take somebody a different direction. And, over time and over, my mistakes for sure, I've learned that, the art of questioning, the art of listening can be such an effective and powerful way to draw alignment, to get people either themselves to accomplish a goal that they didn't know that they could, or bring a team together in alignment so that they can start running, in a direction together. But it really takes, I don't know how to describe it, almost that evolved engagement, right? To not react, not be ready to respond and thinking about what I'm going to say, but that evolved engagement to truly just listen, understand in the terms and the perception of who you're working with, what the problem is, and then ask those effective questions to help them remove those roadblocks, understand what's in the way, come up with, ideas and alternatives on how to address it so that they can move forward, right? It's not about me helping somebody. It's about them just, figuring it out for themselves.
Being a bit of a shepherd in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good term. Different people, different reasons, right? Sometimes it might be emotional intelligence. Sometimes it might be, hey, you're so full of ideas, you don't have a strategy, right? So let's figure out how to take those great ideas, but then prioritize them, organize them so that we can start putting action behind them. So, different people, different things. I
might know a guy that could benefit from that particular conversation. Asking for a friend. I love, and I wrote it down, the phrase evolved engagement. I love that phrase. I was recently earlier this week, I was working with a group of CEOs and we were talking about, why do you listen? And of course, as we went around the room, they all gave every good reason you could think of. Like if you Googled, why should you listen? These are the answers that they gave. And I believe that they believe it. I believe that they all do it. And I put myself in this bucket with them, by the way. They all do it sometimes. They all do it when they have the chance or in the right frame of mind. But after we go through the list, we thank them for it. It's just, okay, well, if we're in the trust tree here, how often are we actually listening for the first chance to talk, for the first chance to solve a problem we believe we've identified, for the first chance to share something we had prepared before this conversation even started? It didn't matter what you were going to say. This is what I was going to say. Or how often are we actually listening for the first indication that we don't have to listen anymore? Right. And you see people kind of chuckle and nod their head. I'm like, I'm guilty too. Let's let's get honest to almost a painful level when we talk about connecting with others. And I love that phrase, I'm forgetting it now, evolved engagement. I love it so much. I forgot it already. Evolved engagement. I think that's so important. Prioritizing empathy over time and outcomes over emotions and all those other things, I think, are so critical. I love hearing it phrased that way.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Especially I find, I'll talk about my personal experience, right? If I have one job and what is weighing against me is the critical element of I need that paycheck. And if I make somebody mad, are there going to be consequences? Is it going to show up in my performance review? Is my bonus going to get dinged? Whatever. Then I automatically hold back and try to not only accommodate, but my listening, my communication changes because I'm trying to fit into, I'm doing, instead of just doing the good work, I'm also trying to protect my income, if that makes sense. If I have multiple jobs or if I have multiple, opportunities, right? And so now I can release that feeling of, boy, I need this, and just focus on what is happening, what needs to be done, and hit it from that higher level. I can engage, right? That evolved engagement, I can hit it for the need that needs to be called out. And then there's less risk for me. And I find that my patience goes up. And then I can very respectfully, very professionally ask really good questions and call behavior out in the moment, assumptions out in the moment, and not feel like I'm at risk. And that in and of itself, right, it requires me to step up. It really does. And so now that I know that, I have to do that. And in that professional moment, in that instance, I can help somebody realize that they're holding themselves back because of an assumption. They're holding themselves back because of a reaction or a behavior, or because the cycle that they've seen before is repeated and repeated and repeated. So their expectation is it's going to be the same. Well, our expectation doesn't have to be the same, right? That one of the folks I was working with recently, it was a simple conversation where she got a job offer, but she really didn't want to take it. Just was every fiber in her body, because her assumption was, I got to take this job and I'm going to be trapped for the next 12 years. And I'm like, what if you just took the job as an experiment, as an experimental ground? Like you come into it at a higher engagement level, and all those things that you've done over the years where you bit your tongue, or you didn't say what you were going to, or you didn't do this, or you wanted to make this happen, but you didn't take that chance. Just do it. Treat it like an experiment. And I tell you, in 8 weeks, this woman has transformed, because every time I talk to her now, I'm like, how's the soap opera? Instead of engaging and being a part of the soap opera, she's just watching the soap opera, but using it for her experimental training ground. It has made all the difference in the world. Her confidence is shot through the roof. She's like, I don't need this job. She's like, as soon as the right opportunity comes, I'm going to go in a different direction, because she feels like she has gotten her control, back in her hands. And what a wonderful, wonderful thing. But, I can only do that if I'm operating at a higher level, not getting engaged in the soap opera myself.
You made so many great points there. We talk about risk mitigation in conversations, and superior subordinate conversations that's happening on both ends, where people can be more motivated to withhold information, or at least spin their information based on what they perceive to be risks or consequences to be. That could be real, it could be emotional, it could be within the relationship. And the word I love in there also is patience. Being patient enough to develop the new perspective or maintain the new perspective to consider that risk differently in order to make the impact or create the impact that we're looking to with somebody else. And I might be making a leap here, but I feel like probably with many of your keynote presentations, but the one that you were given a lot when we first met is likely tied in pretty heavily to risk and perspective. And if I recall correctly, the name of that session is something very, motivating and heartwarming. And I think it's Don't Die Halfway. was that the name of the session?
Yeah, there was I think it was in Charleston. I did that a couple other places, but yeah, the whole idea was about opportunity and challenges come up in front of us, right? And we get so caught up. Me too, right? We get so caught up in the monument, the significance, the overwhelming aspect of the goal. In fact, I was just talking to one of my executives yesterday about this. He's building a new plant. He's building a new business. And we started going through all the things that have to happen, which back to my speech, I related to climbing Aconcagua, right? We're the highest summit in South America. And, whether it's climbing in South America or whether it's building this business that this gentleman's doing, you get to that point where, in this case, you see the summit for the first time and the storm's ripping. And in this case, there's a gentleman that, he lost some of his fingers to frostbite and had some injuries. And another girl had unfortunately passed. She had summited too quickly and came back down to base camp and had a cerebral hemorrhage. And so in that moment, you see that and it's overwhelming, but you can't get to the summit. You can't build a business overnight, right? I mean, literally. So the only thing that we can really do is decide which step are we taking. We're either going to take a step forward or we're going to take a step back. And for the gentleman that was climbing with us and he saw the summit and he started freaking out, he was actually the most fit. He was more fit than I was. I'm like, dude, you just got to get out of your brain, right? And so we have this conversation about it's only about taking one step, and the only thing that you can't do is you can't just stay still. Like that is actually not possible, right? You either take a step back or you take a step forward, one or the other. So we talked through it. We got days before we get to the summit with the executive with the business. We have days before your business is launched, on either side. So what's the most important thing to do now? What's the one thing that you have control over? How do we build, around that? Risk management, pros and cons, take one more step. So the gentleman on the mountain, he puts on his backpack. He takes like 10 steps. And then he freaks out again because that's what we do as humans. We get it back in our brain. It's not like you can have one conversation. Same with a gentleman building a business, right? So we have this conversation, we develop a plan, we take some action. Well, that doesn't mean he's not going to freak out tomorrow. I'd be a fool as a coach or a leader or an executive to think that I could tell my organization or tell my people one time, hey, this is the plan. And then expect that, everybody and all the anomalies and all the variables and all the things that happen throughout the course of the day, that our perspective doesn't change. And so, 10 steps, he freaks out again. Guess what? We have the conversation again. And then, we go through that. He puts back on the pack. He takes 10 more steps. He freaks out again. We have the conversation again. And this time he decided to go to Brazil instead, hang out on the beach, have some wonderful pictures with some very lovely ladies. I think he might have had more fun than I did. The rest of the party, we climbed the mountain, we had a great time. But, there's no mistake in that. There's no failure in that. There is an incredible lesson that I learned. There's an incredible lesson that he learned on accomplishing goals, right? And going towards that summit. And making decisions. It's not about good or bad. It's about what's the next decision and how do I make every decision I've ever made brilliant because of the next decision I'm going to make.
I love the whole story. I enjoy, but I love that last line. how do I make every decision brilliant because of the next decision I'm going to make? Full confession from me, I've got so many decisions that I've made in my life that I regret that you would need multiple trucks to try to move them with me the next time, right? So honestly, even hearing that perspective, like I can make all of those regrets worth it by the next decision that I make. Like that perspective in and of itself is gold.
Absolutely. I was talking to my daughter this morning, and she was, she's going off to college, right? In just a month or two here. And she was talking about, making the right decision and making sure that her life is great. And so we had this moment, and, again, with a lot of the executives I work with, but it's great as a father too. I have learned more from my mistakes and my mishaps and my stressful moments. All those have become really the foundation of my knowledge, of my wisdom, and the ability to share. Allowing people to skin their knees is not a bad thing. Just like teaching my kids how to ride the bike, right? The consequence puts them in a position where balancing on that bike is more important than, leaning on the training wheels or skinning your knee. And so for my daughter, I'm like, it's not about making the perfect decisions, and it's not about living this great life. In fact, when we're living a great life, our ego kind of gets in the way. It's like, wow, I must be pretty good. I'm doing everything right. Life is awesome. But how much are we learning in those moments? And not much, right? So now, this new perspective is embrace the hardship, right? What am I learning from it? Doesn't mean I have to love being sad or love being fearful. But what am I learning in this moment? What's the lesson that I'm taking away? And how can I help me be better? And then, how can I share that and help others be better as well?
So an evolved perspective that leads to the opportunity to create involved engagement, that leads to the opportunity to experience outcomes, achievements, summits, if you will, that we previously never thought possible.
Absolutely. And we all accomplish more, can for sure accomplish more than we ever thought. Now, when I'm teaching rock climbing or when I'm standing on stage and, sharing these lessons, it's crisp, it's evident, it's right there. I've kind of packaged it. But the most important thing is that we get in our own way, right? So, what is it that we need individually? Is it a coach? Is it just a great spouse? Is it a friend that you can have those authentic conversations with? Is it just pushing ourselves to the limit? Is it that great sport or activity that we're involved in? It doesn't, the avenue is different for everybody. Is it a brilliant book? The avenue is different for everybody. But the important thing for me is what I see in people, what I see in everybody that I meet is that potential. They can do more than they ever dreamed possible. So I just want to, I want to listen really, really well, right? I want to just listen with all my ears, all my heart, all my aptitude, and hear what assumptions they have that they're making their decisions and operating by. And then just ask the question, is this true? And put it in front of them to determine. And if the answer is yes, then by all means, let's keep the conversation going. And if the answer is no, by all means, let's keep the conversation going, but figure out how to navigate through that.
Love it. There was another piece in there that I grabbed onto when you were going through the story, when you talked about having to have the conversation with the guy with the backpack multiple times and then equating that to business. Honestly, you could equate that to business, parenting, coaching, everything. We feel like we tell somebody something once, they should have the message. Our job is done. They've been told, we can go on with our life. And then for whatever reason, like you said, perspectives change, they get busy, something else happens, maybe they forget. Maybe it's a novel situation to them. Maybe they're emotional, they're scared, they're nervous, they're unsure. So then now we get upset, maybe take it personally, maybe get frustrated, maybe in some way, like subconsciously even start punishing somebody because we have to tell them again.
Absolutely.
Where in reality, for most leaders and most organizations with most people that work for them, The opportunities for you to tell somebody one time and have it stick exactly the way you want it to are minimal at best. So from your experience, and mountain climbing really could be the answer. If it is, great. If not, what lessons or experiences did you have along the way that taught you that patience and appreciation for the human condition in order to continue to revisiting those conversations as part of the process and not an affront to your expert leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. The one that jumps to mind was pretty significant. Early, I was a child musician. I started traveling around the world. I was playing the cello. I, toured internationally, multiple tours. One of the last tours I was on, we ended up in the Czech Republic, Prague, just outside Prague, Czechoslovakia at that time. And my host family, dear host family, widowed, 3 young kids. She was tiny and frail, but man, she had this finger. She could get her finger right at me. Broken English, great experience. No money. I mean, no money. Went to their house, that's where I'm staying for a couple of nights. And, everything about it was very, what's the word? Humble. That's not the word I'm looking for, but very modest, extremely modest, right? But they gave everything. And so we had wonderful conversations, again, broken English, and they fed me, and, just amazing, and, gave up their bed, the very small space that they had, took care of me for a couple of days, and awesome relationship. So we're getting ready to leave. And, we're saying goodbyes, and the kids are hugging, and we're having a great, and I have this beautiful picture of their blonde daughter who's in my arms, and we're having fun, and getting ready to get on the bus, and I just lean over and I'm like, with all respect, as I'm hugging this frail, incredibly strong woman, I'm like, why did you bring me here? Like, thank you so much, but my goodness, like, out of all the things that you could do with the money that you have, like, why did you bring me here? And she looked at me, and she got her finger going again, and then pulled my face in, and I mean the strongest eyes I've ever seen, right? And she said, I'll never be able to send my kids into the world, so I brought the world to them. And what's incredible about that moment, I didn't realize the impact that we have, all of us have, on other people all the time. All the time. So it is my responsibility not to have the conversation once, not to tell somebody or ask that question once, but it's really my responsibility, because this woman, she helped me find my purpose. So we have to do what it takes to make sure that perspectives, understanding align. And that does shift, and that does change, and other variables come in, other pressures come in. Today we have a conversation and my mind is focused, and yes, we are in complete alignment. And then I wake up the next morning and my car breaks down. Well, guess what? Now I'm in a different mindset, so that when I come into the office, like, it's not top priority that I'm thinking about this. And then the next day I get a phone call, and, my father-in-law has cancer, like, whatever it is, in that moment, we're aligned. But we are foolish if we think that there aren't pressures and environmental issues and complexities and things that change our mind within 24 hours, much less a week or a month. So we have to revisit that, and we have to have it at the conversational level and understand the depth there. We have to have it at the presentation level, so we understand it at that level, right? There are different depths of understanding and alignment, and we're foolish if we think we can say something once and have complete, clear agreement and understanding.
Very well stated, extremely well illustrated, and that's an amazing story.
Thanks.
I would dare say that's the type of story that should be featured in a book. Just putting it out there,
It is. It's not out yet, but guess what? That's like chapter number 1, finding your purpose.
Just trying to provide a little positive peer pressure. That's all.
I love it. I'm hearing you.
That's amazing. You also recently gave another presentation, one that I had every intention of attending and wasn't able to. So I certainly apologize for that.
Well, you have another chance now. I'm doing it in either Columbia or Greenville in about a month. I can't remember.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I need the date. But I think that one also has a wonderfully wholesome and positive, well-messaged title that leads to some very, very, very valuable lessons and takeaways. I don't want to misquote you. So the title of that presentation is...
The 5 justifications on why your boss is an ass. Yeah. So, this definitely has come from experience. But I dare say not only reporting to a boss that's an ass, but I've had some ass moments myself. And it really, I break down the 5 reasons, which I won't bother getting into here, but at the end of the day, I have this fundamental belief that we're all really trying hard to do a good job. Like there's a few reasons, and sometimes you get into a situation of imbalance where somebody's kind of lashing out or aggressive or whatever, but for the most part, most people that I meet, I really feel we're trying to do a good job, including bosses. But the pressure that bosses, CEOs, executives that they're under, they're trying to make these things happen. And when things aren't happening as quickly or in the way or with enough detail or with enough strategy that they're comfortable with, then bad behavior comes out. Not necessarily intentional, but it goes back to this idea of all of us kind of know the textbook definition of how to listen well. A lot of us know the textbook leadership, how you inspire, how you, lead people. It's one thing to regurgitate it, like academically. It's another thing to live it and breathe it. And so, as I go through these 5 elements, where I start is the negative impact that it has on people when it happens. And the disruption inside, the emotional drain, the self-doubt that happens if somebody is micromanaging it, or if somebody is lashing out and being passive aggressive. So those things happen not with the intent of negativity, but the intent is we're trying to do this thing, we're trying to move forward, we're trying, for instance, that guy on the mountain, I could have said, "Suck it up, buttercup, it's time to get to the mountain." Like, who cares if a guy had lost a couple fingers? Like, that would be a typical leadership, because I'm under stress. Like, I kind of push this other guy because I'm not operating at that evolved engagement level. So, I go through kind of the negative impacts, but then I back into really what is the rationale? Like why are these negative behaviors coming out from leaders, CEOs, bosses? And ultimately, I conclude, you're going to love this. It's almost like we planned it, even though we didn't. The key is us. If we have a boss acting like an ass, we need to listen. We need to listen to what it is that's pushing them into this negative behavior so that we can go correct it. If the details aren't being taken care of, and that's what's spinning them out and making them behave the way that they're behaving, then the question is, okay, Mr. Boss, Mr. Leader, like, I hear what you're saying. Let me kind of understand, this is what you're trying to accomplish. And by the way, I'm also quick to give feedback. Like, just happened the other day, I had a guy walk by me and he goes, "Well, you've been here 6 weeks." And I said, And then he was going on to other things. And I'm like, excuse me, like, can we back up? What does that mean? And he said, what do you mean? I said, what does you've been here 6 weeks mean? And he goes, oh, nothing. And I'm like, well, let me share. It makes me feel like crap because either I'm thinking that I'm not delivering for you, or there was an expectation that I missed, or, I don't know. But if I let this go, like I walk out of here and my self-esteem, my confidence, my ability to serve you has been kicked down a notch. So I need to understand, what does you've been here 6 weeks mean? Is it just a verbal crutch and a transition? Or is there something there that you think I should have done that I haven't done? Or is it something else? And he goes, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, well, seriously, like, what does this mean? Not to be a jerk, but I would just, I need to know where you're at. And he goes, well, yeah, I guess, we were talking about some PTO, some HR, stuff. And he goes, you've been here 6 weeks. I just figured this would have been done already. I said, okay, well, I appreciate that. And now that I understand that that's a priority, I'll raise that in the list because frankly, I've been dealing with other things. But let's also be clear. I work here 2 days a week. I haven't been here 6 weeks. I've been here 12 days. And he goes, holy shit. He goes, you've done a lot in 12 days. And I'm like, thank you. So it's just about achieving that clarity, but that falls on us. Right. And so I can call my boss, in this case, it was, one of my clients, but I can say he's an ass because he's being a jerk and being passive aggressive, or it's my responsibility to listen, understand what the true nature of the issue is, and then help him and help me overcome that, because we're going to address it and not just let it slide.
It's a great example. I know you said you didn't want to take the time to get into the 5, and I won't push you for it. But what's one? What's maybe the biggest one? What's maybe the biggest one, or the one worth talking about the most? What's one?
I won't give the top one, because people can go out and watch it online or whatever. But one of them is, one of my favorites is, you hear this leader say, well, I don't like to micromanage, but. And then they dive into micromanage, right? Yeah. And that causes all kinds of disruption, because if they're coming in from this higher level, they haven't been involved in the details of putting things together. A lot of times that micromanagement is filled with all sorts of assumptions. And, there's a benefit in having a different perspective for sure. But micromanagement in and of itself can be very deflating and very, very frustrating.
For sure. And I'll find the video and I'll link it to this once it's published, so people can watch the video and get the whole presentation. So we'll give people plenty of ways to experience you. I promise. Once we put this thing together in the show notes, we'll add it all. I worked for a guy for a long time who I lovingly refer to as a passive aggressive micromanager. So essentially, I would go easily weeks and often months with having no conversation at all, like zero, maybe a, hey, how you doing? Did you see the game? But like no real interaction. And then all of a sudden it was like swoop in, bam, where are you? What are you doing? Did you think about this? Did you think about that? Did you like, yes, all, and then this. But so very much a passive aggressive micromanager. Like I'll ignore you for 3 months, micromanage the hell out of you for 3 days, and then go back to ignoring you for 3 months. So it was almost like that particular individual felt like being on you every day is micromanaging. So I'm going to give you plenty of space and then just get on you in these little days. And I honestly believe that a big part of that, and this was said out loud, and I don't know, I never had the guts to talk to him about it directly, so I have to own that. But I recall him saying multiple times that he didn't want to be his previous boss. And I find that in situations, we have a decision, right? We can either be the best of who we want to be, or we cannot be somebody else. And anytime we're trying to not be somebody else, we'll probably end up being more like them than we realize, because it becomes this target fixation. The more I'm trying not to, I am. But we're also not coming anywhere near maximizing our own potential or our own opportunities, because our mind's eye isn't taking us towards the positive. It's trying to steer us away from the negative, which keeps us on the edge maybe on the cliff, if I may dare to use a mountain climbing, on the cliff of the negativity we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, there's so many odd behaviors that come out, and we justify them because we're trying to accomplish something. And life is just a big experiment, right? And so, going back to this idea of, I believe everybody's trying to do a good job. I also am, I'm one of these drivers out there that somebody cuts me off, and I'm just like, it's all good. Like, I've done things by accident, before, for sure, had a blind spot or was thinking about something, or, whatever. So I'm pretty patient and passive, on the driver's side. Yeah. And at the same time, something will happen and I'll do something, and somebody, you see them just yelling in their car and giving me very nice hand signals. And my first reaction is, man, that dude is stressed out. That trigger sent him flying that much. It's like, man, what's going on in their life that, they're so freaked out. So it's just, it kind of, I'll give you one other of the fives. Yeah. One of them is, we don't have time to wait, or, I don't have time to teach, or, they're not going to do a good job because they don't have the big picture type of thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If we don't do it now, then the next thing that comes, guess what the excuse is? Well, they don't understand the big picture. Okay, well, whose fault is it that they don't understand the big picture of what's going on in the business? It's the leader's fault, right? It's like, so take the time, do the onboarding, have the conversations, sit with them, ask questions, loop back again, right? Can't tell them once and expect it to sit. You got to loop back so that they understand the big picture. What better asset can you develop in an employee than having them understand the big picture, draw that alignment, and now they can run on their own, right?
So true. I don't know how many times I work with senior leaders who are telling me they're frustrated because their employees or frontline managers aren't thinking like business owners. Well, yeah.
They're not a business owner.
No, yeah. They don't have that experience. They don't know what that perspective is. They might think they are, and maybe in their own perspective they are, but are we taking the time to educate to the standards we expect? Or are we looking for turnkey solutions with the people around us? I chose you because I think you can do it. I'm leaving you alone. Or I told you once, I'm leaving you alone.
It's a hallmark. So many of the CEOs, executives that I work with, they want to put it in the core values of the business. I want everybody to have an ownership mentality. Well, let's talk about hypocrisy for a minute. So you're not willing to give up ownership stake. So you are hiring people that have in their life determined that they want to be an employee, not a business owner. And, there's not even like an ESOP program, like an employee stock option type of thing. So you're asking for ownership on one side because you want to elevate their thinking, their strategy, et cetera. But you're not willing to give ownership stakes to actually have the reward and the risk that's associated with ownership mentality. It doesn't make sense, right? That is such a ridiculous ask, and it's certainly not a core value. And I even really question strongly whether it's a performance management element to be rated, from an employee standpoint, because it's not fair. It's completely off balance. And really, it's a shield for an ass behavior that is a cop-out. To say, I'm not going to spend time, I'm not going to develop, I'm not going to show the big picture, I'm not going to share expectations. I just expect that they have ownership mentality and will figure it out like I did. Well, the difference is I, the leader, the CEO, that's got it all on the line, they had to figure it out because that was the path that they chose. Not fair to ask somebody else to do that.
Agreed. With the few minutes that we have left, want to take
Yes,
a time
sir.
to highlight something that you did pretty awesome early, something pretty awesome you did. I'm still working on my grammar. Something pretty awesome that you did earlier this year. It's no secret that there have been many more layoffs this year than in recent memory. There's been a high concentration of those in the tech space. Often when you hear people say, I care about other people, I'm here to help other people learn from my mistakes, develop them, support them. People say that to some degree, they mean it, but it's always interesting to see to the level that they back it up or they exemplify it. You went out publicly on your social media and posted that you understood all of these things were going on and that people likely had more control of their situation than they realized, more alternatives or options than they realized, and that they just needed to reach out to people, start the conversation, take control back of the process. And you offered yourself, you posted your calendar link on social media and offered for people to reach out to you if they either didn't have somebody or for one specific reason or another wanted to speak with you. Walk us through how that went, what you've done and what you've learned.
Well, I have to say, my heart, day after day, throughout the day, I saw all these people, laid off, lost my job, don't know what to do, need help, share my resume, whatever. And I was just like, my gosh, like there was something in me that just kind of like broke or stepped up or, I don't know what. But yeah, just, started sharing advice and articles and stuff. But I'm like, there has to be more. So I'm like, put out my calendar link, set up time with me if you want to talk. And I figure I got time, I got a half hour for anybody that needs anything, a half hour. It's like that lady back, looking at me saying like, you have this influence. So if I can give a half hour and help somebody, now I'll admit I had a little bit of a panic attack once I published that because I'm like, what did I just do? But
undo.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it went a little nuts. And I met every single one. Nobody abused it. No, I mean, it was no sales guy got on there and be like, hey, I can help you with your coaching. Because it wasn't about I wasn't charging for this, right? I had no intention. I was just like, hey, if I can help. But met the most brilliant people that were just, a little bit broken and needed a little help. And, with my 30 years of, experience with, HR and executive development, personal development, coaching, all this stuff. I helped, quite a few people just look at their resume and I'm like, oh, dude, like, we need to move this around. We need to do like, you got 2 lines and 2 inches on your top of your resume. And if you don't captivate, they're not reading the rest. And, other people, is helping with like interviewing skills and like that for, first couple questions. And one girl, oh my gosh, she has a brilliant story. You should talk to her. She's dating a Vietnam or not a vet, but he's a double amputee. And he was in the canine unit. And so when he left the military, no, he doesn't have feet anymore. His dog retired and is now his service dog.
Nice.
Belgian Malinois. And so now they raise Belgian Malinois just for service dogs for military, for vets. Great story. So she needed a job that had a little bit of flexibility to it. Great person, great. I mean, she really knows her stuff, but she was just having problems connecting. And so I had this idea. I'm like, let's use our half hour. I'm going to interview you for 10 minutes. I'm going to ask questions. I've been interviewing for a long time. So questions that would be like specific enough to draw out like what your strengths are, but kind of broad enough that anybody who saw this video, that there would, they could follow up with. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I interviewed, took the link, pushed it out across my social media. 15 minutes, she had a recruiter call her and she got a job.
That's awesome.
I mean, how brilliant, right? So, I mean, story after story after story. I'm sure we don't have time, but it filled me up. I mean, a half hour, right? I mean, totally filled me up. And then the ironic twist was I had a lady call me back And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, I'll give a half hour to anybody, anytime, an hour for sure. We get beyond that. It's like, I gotta, like, are we friends? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? I do have bills to pay. And she said, I want to hire you as my executive coach. And I said, cool. I don't really do that, but she says you do now. I'm like, all right. So we put together a program. She is doing, oh my gosh, within 6 weeks, she went from 0 to 1,000 and is on, this incredible journey. Another gentleman out of Atlanta, he really wants to get out of the corporate, rat race, and he wants to start his own company, but just doesn't really have any idea what kind of company, where to start, how do you do your marketing research, how do you develop the funding? Like, does he want to, absentee ownership? Does he want a physical presence? Does he want a virtual company? Well, I've done all those things. So it's so much fun. I mean, I get energized, meeting with these folks once a week and just asking those great questions so that they can navigate through their journey a little bit quicker, with a little less risk, with a little bit more planning, just based upon the conversations that we're having. So, never thought I would be an executive career coach. And that looks different. Some people want a promotion. Some people want to change industries. Some people want to just do something different. But man, it's a lot of fun. And the best part of it all is to see these folks within a couple of weeks, a couple months, I mean, totally gain that confidence, lean into that opportunity, understand the summit is, one step and then one step and then one step, that journey, and make it happen. And if I can be, helpful in that and manifesting that, then happy to do it.
That says so much about who you are, what you do, how you implement that evolved engagements that you talked about earlier, the patience, the listening, whether you're applying those lessons mountaineering, whether you're applying those lessons in your own career, whether you're doing it on your own free time to help other people. That says so much about you, and knowing that you've had that impact in such a short time, just with the people you volunteered to help, is pretty amazing. So outside of going back through your social media, finding your calendar link and putting their own time on your calendar, where can people go to find out more about Jason Collett, Adaptivity, and all the amazing things that you do?
Well, I appreciate that. So there's a famous musician in Canada, and guess what his name is? Jason Collett. So he dominates. You do a Google search, and he is the one that shows up. So I had to add my middle initial. So it's Jason T. Collett. So the website's just, www, of course, if people even still refer to it that way. But it's just jasontcollett.com. Same on LinkedIn, Jason T. Collett. And I'm available. I'm always fascinated to hear people's stories. I love, the human condition and what we go through, the struggles, the pain, the joys, the successes. It's all meaningful, right? It's all incredible. And I have a passion around, folks that are passionate about finding that stuff and finding their strengths and, leaning into this intentional life rather than an accidental life, just kind of like going through and not being inspired. For those folks, man, I am totally available and excited to have the conversation. I'm excited to listen.
And I know that to be true. Really quick, this famous Canadian musician that you reference.
Yeah.
Has he ever played cello in the Czech Republic?
No.
He doesn't have it. He doesn't count. His resume is incomplete.
Well, one of these days I'm going to meet him face to face and be like, dude, why are you stealing my social media? Like, obviously. Come on, or maybe I'll ask him, like, are we related? Like, what's going on? So, yeah.
Well, hey, man, it is always such a pleasure to see you and talk to you and learn from you. And thank you very much for sharing all your time and insight today. I really, really do appreciate it. I look forward to continue the conversation on this platform again down the road. but also seeing you in person and watching all the exciting stuff that you're doing again very soon.
Absolutely. The feeling is mutual, man. Every time we get together, I am lifted up and ready to lean into the next challenge. So appreciate you very much and all you're doing. And by the way, I used to teach communication at a university, and if I would have had your book, it totally would have been in our curriculum. And I have told that to many, 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 many people. So appreciate what you're doing on the corporate side, the individual side, and the book is a huge gold star in my view.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm eagerly awaiting yours.
No pressure.
One last jab, one last twist of the knife before we go. But hey, man,
All right,
always, it is amazing to see you. Thank you so much. Let's do this again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Once again, Jason, thank you so much for carving out the time, for joining us, for sharing all of those stories, all of those experiences. I'm pretty sure that line, I can't bring my kids to the world, so I bring the world to my kids, if I'm quoting that correctly, is going to be one of the most powerful lines I will ever hear for as long as this show lasts. So thank you so much for sharing all of your time, experience, and expertise with us. And I hope everybody that joined us got so much out of that conversation that they can apply to their business and personal conversations as well. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. Of course, on the way out, we're going to thank our sponsors one more time, HumanTell. Head over to humantell.com and enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off industry-leading training on how to recognize changing emotions, shifts of emotions that people experience based on their changing facial expressions and nonverbal communication. Also, head over to Emotional Intelligence Magazine, ei-magazine.com, and experience their ever-growing library of emotional intelligence resources, from articles to videos to podcast educational events. Check them out. And for the investigative interviewers, please take the time, head over to the International Association of Interviewers at certifiedinterviewer.com. Check out all of the resources they have there for interviewers, from their interrogation-related documents and resources, strategic planning guides, to their member communication, to their legal updates, to the certified forensic interviewer designation, to the events that they have coming up, their webinars and in-person events that they have. They are dedicated to providing interviewers with the resources they need to maintain their elite status and conduct morally, legally, and ethically successful interviews in any context. So check out certifiedinterviewer.com for the International Association of Interviewers. Again, thank you all for being with us today. I truly appreciate it. Please do the things the algorithms like. Give Jason and all of our great guests the additional exposure they deserve by liking, sharing, commenting. Please tell your friends, expand the show. We really appreciate that. Share your feedback with us. What have you liked? What have you learned? What have you applied? What haven't you liked so much? Please let us know. And of course, if you have someone who you think would be a great guest on the show, share them with us. Make the introduction so we can get them onto the show and share their perspective, their experience with the world as well. Thank you again. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.